Mom declined to wear the bulletproof vest because she figured they would just go for her head. She did learn evasive driving techniques, however, and thought that an assassination attempt could provide her with an opportunity to take someone out with her Jeep. She was forced to endure protesters with bloody fetuses at her house regularly until she held a huge counter-protest with all her neighbors and cake and ice cream. The funny part was, when my mom adopted a black German Shepherd dog, the protesters complained that she was intimidating them. There were a number of times when women who had protested outside her house or clinic came into the clinic as patients. She would listen to their stories and counsel them. Many of them would try to tell my mom that they weren't like the other bad women who came to get abortions. Sometimes she would agree to perform abortions on these women, and sometimes she would refuse, depending on the case. I've missed my mom a lot over the past 11 years. It was odd to see her vilified by some and lionized by others, but she loved the fight. She worked long hours, and the pressure of her job exhausted her. My mom's courage was nothing compared to that of Dr. Tiller, who was known nationwide, who at the time of his murder had already been shot in both arms by terrorists and bombed, who lived in a far more conservative part of the country, who was prosecuted simply for practicing medicine. So let's applaud Dr. Tiller for his courage, year after year, when he could have been forgiven for packing it in and saying that he'd paid his dues. But instead, he performed the most controversial procedure in medicine year after year, year after year, until they finally killed him for it. George Tiller.
As I said, NYCLU is one of the groups that helps make sure that we keep abortion legal. But also we need people who make sure that we have good laws. And it is very fitting that New York City, just in early April, passed a clinic access law that would ensure that intimidation and harassment at our clinics does not continue. It is very easy for us to think that intimidation, harassment, and tactics that we hear about don't happen here in New York City, but believe me, they do. And we are very lucky to have a city council that cares. There's a lot of talk about heroes, and I'm going to go as far as to call her this. But City Council Speaker, the Honorable Christine Quinn, made sure that became law, made sure that our clinics could protect themselves, made sure that our police could arrest people when they harassed, intimidated, and here she is.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a very kind and generous introduction. You know, when I was walking around my apartment, I heard, you know, the TV on, I guess, as background noise, as we all do, and I heard abortion doctor murder. And I stopped. And I actually consciously thought, I didn't know there was some retrospective on the choice movement on TV tonight. Because it was impossible to think that it could be 2009 and this was happening again. But obviously when I sat down and looked at the TV, it wasn't some look back. It was right now. And on the TV they began running footage of Dr. Tiller. And he was interviewed the day after he was shot in both arms. And he was standing outside his clinic, going back to work. And the reporters questioned, how can you do this? How can you be here today? And he said, yesterday, when I was in need of medical care, there were doctors there for me. And today, there are women in need of medical care, and I am the doctor for them. That courage, that unthinkable bravery is what we have to remember as we move forward. You know, some of all of you in the crowd are probably actual doctors. But what we have to all embrace in a way is that attitude of Dr. Tiller's, that we all in some ways have to become the caretakers who make sure, either as medical providers or as elected officials or as activists, that there are doctors there every day to take care of women, just as they would be if we were rushed to the emergency room right now, that they're there every day. You know, and Donna used the word terrorist, and she's right. What they want is us to become afraid. And they want that fear to paralyze us. And they want that fear to make us stop fighting. And we know more than anything that what Dr. Tiller wants today is for us to fight harder, for our voices to become louder and our demands to become greater and stronger. As Mary Alice said, with the help of NARAL and the Civil Liberties Union and Planned Parenthood and many others, we passed a tighter clinic protection bill in April. And when we heard from a clinic in the Bronx a few 6 or 8 months before that they on days were rendered unable to do business because there were so many protesters, that the director of the clinic had been knocked over and knocked unconscious by protesters, it was hard for me to accept that that was still the case in our 5 boroughs. But it is. And the best way we can honor Dr. Tiller's memory is to make sure that tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that and the day after that, that every receptionist, every nurse, every doctor, every patient who is seeking care in the 5 boroughs can go get it, whether they can pay for it or not, and that they can get it safely. That's the best way to honor his memory and make the statement that we will not be afraid and we will not be moved backwards. So thank you all for being here today. God bless all of you, and God bless the memory of Dr. Tiller, and may we think and pray of for his family, who not only has to live without him, but in some quest for life by these people who clearly have no regard for life. His family now has to live with the memory of having seen him gunned down in their own church. Think of it, the place they might go for on Sunday for solace is now the place he was killed. So we need to think and pray for them in the days, weeks, and months ahead. So thank you all so much for being here.